Long-term studies show that the most common indicators of a fulfilling, successful life beyond school are not centered around test scores, but on the ability to engage with others, overcome obstacles, set and pursue personal goals, contribute to the welfare of others, and become active members of the community. Yet schools remain laser focused on test scores, missing the mark on investing in students in ways that will enhance both their individual well being and the well being of society at large. We have an opportunity to shift this narrative and refocus on what truly matters. What I just read to you is from our guest today. A bit more about our guest. Dr. Ann Paonessa is an educator, consultant, and speaker with over 20 years of experience in schools, including a decade as an administrator at the university level. She's been an adjunct for Illinois Resource Center, redesigning and teaching the Innovative Methods course. She has also taught courses required for teachers to earn an ESL bilingual endorsement and is passionate about creating engaging, student-centered learning environments. But here's where it gets good, because this is why I had to ask her to join us. She specializes in integrating social structures into core instruction to enhance both academic outcomes and student well-being. Her book, Essential Connection Skills, Integrating Social Connections into Core Content, challenges the over-reliance on technology in classrooms and provides a framework for fostering deeper student engagement. Grounded in research and practical application, the book explores how building connections to self, others, learning, and the community creates classrooms where students not only achieve academically, but also develop the social and emotional skills necessary for lifelong success. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Ann Paonessa to the Teach4Justice podcast. Welcome, Ann.
Why, thank you, Alfredo. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So what inspired you to write Essential Connection Skills, and how do you think it addresses the current challenges in education?
Well, that has a couple of layers of answers. And the first really is, it comes from the students that I had the privilege of teaching. When they were in my classroom, my first day as a middle school ESL teacher, I had a student in the back raise his hand, and I'll never forget. He said, "Teacher, what number do I need on that test? I don't need to be here. I don't need help with English. I don't need to be in this class." And we were the ESL classroom right off the cafeteria where all the kids could see who was coming in and out. And I know at middle school, you're wanting to fit in and not stand out from your peers. So right away, I knew I had to do something different. I couldn't just stick with the regular curriculum. If I didn't connect with these kids, if I didn't help them to see how this class could help them kind of shift their mindset on it, our time together wouldn't be well spent. So from that, we went and developed a school day embedded service learning club. And I was able to get a foundation to sponsor us. The kids came up with a logo. Everyone had a t-shirt. We were Westlake Helpers, Global Kids Taking Action. And it was truly inspiring to see the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade middle school kids coming together. They worked on project. They would write Dear Hero letters to injured veterans. They wrote Dear Friend letters to people living at an area senior center. And,
Wow.
you know, they loved it. And they really took on that ownership. And what was happening was not only did their mindset change about being in the class, they were doing something for an authentic purpose. So my goals were being met. They were helping. It was definitely helping their English to grow, but it wasn't a workbook. It wasn't
Right.
just doing what was, read and answer these questions. It was something real world that mattered to them. And so they weren't as focused on the language production. They were really focused on working together to make something special for these two groups of people. And out of that, their confidence grew, their language grew, and they were more motivated when it came to some of those more traditional lessons.
Wow.
So,
Like, I'm hearing that you were teaching them the language of belonging,
mhm,
right? The
right,
language of connection, right? The language of service, as
yeah,
opposed to just the language of, well, early language acquisition is, the nouns, asking questions, asking for help, right?
right,
And instead of seeking to connect, right? And what I'm also hearing, because I've worked at several multilingual schools, is there's more to these young people than just asking for help. They can offer help, they can offer connection, they can offer things also. So I really love what you were doing there.
100%, and providing them with that opportunity to empower them to make a difference and know that it wasn't one day in the future, oh, you'll have more job opportunities because you speak more than one language. Right here and now, with whatever languages you have, whatever age you are, you can reach out into the community and make a difference. So it was through working with those students, Alfredo, that I became passionate about integrating connection, integrating service into instruction. And as a district administrator, I would walk into classrooms and sometimes see everyone on a device, no one interacting. And I know there's times where there's, assessments taking place, and there are times where everyone's on the computer. But this was just during a regular school day, an instructional block. And even the teacher was on their computer, and there
Yeah.
was no connection happening. And so I really felt compelled. Um, we need to shift the narrative on this. We really need everyone to prioritize and think about how can we embed connection into our classrooms.
What kind of, because I agree with you, and I have done some similar things, which is why I'm so attracted to your book and the work you're doing and this idea of connection. But I know I got some pushback
Mhm.
in regards to, stick to content, stick to pacing, stick to the many things that people where uh, colleagues who may not want to are a little scared to connect for their
Yeah,
own reasons, right? For their own
right.
reasons. What kind of pushback were you getting in the early days here?
I was so fortunate that I really worked with administrators that weren't as familiar with multilingual learners or language acquisition or what was needed. So they gave me a pretty wide berth. But I know, I
Love
know
it.
that that's not always the case. And even when I was a principal, when I would encourage teachers to maybe incorporate some different strategies or different ways, like I understand how busy teachers are. I've been a teacher, and you want to make sure you're getting to the content. So I know it can be challenging, and we really believe and lean into the power of PLCs, our professional learning communities. And if there's one or two teachers that want to try some of these strategies and others don't, it can be challenging. And that was one of the purposes of this book, is really putting things out there that a team of teachers could come together, and it's still using whatever core content you have, whatever core resource, but it's layering in these strategies that can help bring in that connection within those four domains that you mentioned: connections to self, to others, to their learning, or to the community. And I view it as maybe like your Jamba Juice smoothie. There it is, but you can add that boost in, that immunity boost or
Right.
that protein boost. So I view these strategies in that same way. You have, of course, our standards that our instruction's grounded in, but what can we add in? How could we motivate kids and prepare them for life, not just for that next test?
You mentioned earlier about observing some teachers who, at least on that day, in that observation seem to be all tech, including the teacher, but looking at their device.
Right.
In your book, you emphasize the importance of balancing technology with the human interaction. Why is this balance so
Right.
critical for student success today?
Right. It truly is, Alfredo. And again, I'm an advocate. I love technology.
Right.
Um, I- I'm a fan, and we know it can give us some important data. It can engage kids in lessons that will, are directed and adapted just for them and where they're at to fill those skill gaps. And it's certainly valuable. But if we look at what could be a typical school day where students, there's some whole group instruction, and then they're on maybe their one-to-one devices doing these adaptive lessons, or
Mhm.
they're with the teacher in a small guided group. When we look and audit a school day, we have to really be careful about how many opportunities do our students have to interact with each other, to learn with and through each other, to have fun while learning, to work on a project together, to share their ideas, to communicate, collaborate. All of these things can accidentally kind of go to the wayside if we're having this over reliance on technology, which again has value, but I'm saying and asserting that we definitely need balance.
Yeah, and I think part of the balance, what I'm learning and having a bunch of these conversations is, um, like there's a couple of parts here. The content, which I think
Mhm.
gets over some teachers over focus on, then the
Right.
tech or the tool, which other teachers put too much emphasis on. And we start to get away from the process, planning the process, where the process is just as important about as the content and the tool, right? The process, the sequencing, the quality of the questions that we're asking, right? And I think when you hit that third piece, it's so easy. I don't blame some teachers for
Right.
wanting to set up a quizzes, especially now, or some gamified thing.
Right.
It's easy, and if you're teaching in a school with lower test scores,
Mhm.
it's you can sometimes point to these other things and say, "Well, I did the tech,
Yeah.
blame the tech," right?
Right.
And so it can be very tricky, and we can lose sight of that connection with your teacher, right? Isn't there research that suggests that the most important, factor in whether or not a student learns is the human in the front of the room?
100%. Yeah, and having friends in the room can make
Yeah.
all the difference too, that having that connection. And when we talk about why this is so needed today more than ever, if we look at students' home life, all of us, we have screens everywhere. It's so common to go into a restaurant and we see young kids on tablets, everyone else catching up on their phones, and then maybe conversation starts when the food comes. It's Brandon McDonald termed it technoference, where we can be in the same room with people, and yet because everyone's doing their own interaction on a device, we aren't truly interacting. So a lot of our kids, not only are multilingual learners, come into our schools um, needing more opportunities to communicate, to express and share their ideas, to learn how to listen and build on the ideas of others. My co-collaborator on the book, Dr. Jeff Sweers, who's an expert in communication, you know, we acknowledge and recognize that our kids need more opportunities to build that skill if they're going to be successful moving forward.
Technoference. First time I've heard that, but hey, guilty as charged here with letting my kids take the phone out at the restaurant and things like that. But I'm working on it because you're right. It interferes with that connection time. I've heard
Right.
myself saying to my kids, just be bored. Just
Sit
be
with that.
bored.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they certainly struggle with that.
It really is, a call for balance. It's not saying, we don't want devices in schools, or of course we're going to use them outside of school, but it's striking that balance where we also have these opportunities to connect for kids to develop pro-social behaviors, to learn how to read, body cues from each other, and
right.
so
Right.
important.
And their future is going to have to be a balance of the tech
Yeah.
and that for most of them. Okay, so let's get to how teachers implement it. This book is known for its practical strategies, often presented in a table format with icons. How do these visual elements make the strategies more accessible and actionable for teachers?
Right. Well, the formatting to me was so important. If this was a text heavy book, and we know truly how busy teachers are,
Yep.
I mean, beyond a doubt. And your any teacher, like, just so overwhelming to get through the day, and planning and doing everything you can to meet a diverse range of needs. So I knew that if we truly wanted teachers to try these techniques, we wanted to make it as user-friendly as possible. So I felt strongly about putting the strategies into tables with icons to make it very easy to navigate, where you didn't have to necessarily read the book from start to finish. You could, choose to start in a domain like connection with others, scan through, find a strategy that you wanted to try that you could integrate into an upcoming unit.
Well, you know
So,
what I like about that too is in the same way that we were talking about a little bit off camera earlier about students having things that they have assets, they show up with assets. So do teachers who might want to read this book, and there might be a certain domain that in their mind they might think, well, I know I'm good at this connection thing, and I believe in connection, which is why I'm buying this book. But I could use a little help maybe in these other areas, and the way that they are presenting it makes sense to me. And so there's some real value there. And often I know teachers, they stop at the theory too quickly and they're like, just give me the menu.
right.
So it feels a little bit like, okay, buddy, you want the menu? You're already sold. You don't need the 3 chapters to get sold. Okay, here's the menu.
Oh my gosh, Alfredo, I love that. And the analogy that comes to mind for me, I just Googled yesterday Mediterranean bean salad recipes, and I had
Uh-huh.
that option to jump to the recipe instead of
Right.
reading, where it came from
Yeah, the
and
history of it.
love it. And, we always use it at this, for this holiday.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it is. It's kind of that jump to the
Yeah.
recipe. I love that analogy.
Yeah, you already know you want it. So let's
I
get to
don't have
it.
to tell me.
Love it. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the style of the book, because to me it sounds very teacher friendly. And you've mentioned that the book includes research, but it
Mhm.
maintains a conversational tone. How did you find the balance between, scholarly rigor for those that need to be convinced, or, they only use research-based strategies, and a friendly, approachable style?
Right. Well, to your point, we couldn't just have only the strategies, because we do want to show that this is grounded in research, grounded in what's best for our students, and it is so impactful. And not only does it help students grow holistically, but it actually will raise their academic outcomes, which is something, some teachers are, as you pointed out, they're wanting everything. We know everyone is accountable and those scores are watched, but helping them to see, not only will this help your kids be engaged at school, but it will help with their academic outcomes. But that being said, again, knowing how busy teachers are, I wanted to provide the research, but in a way that felt really conversational. There's some pop culture references.
Nice.
Um, One of my closest friends just got married last night. I give her a hard time in the book about not having Dave Matthews Band as one of her favorites. I give a shout out to my golf teacher, I just wanted it to feel like you and I sitting here talking through, sharing some stories, making it very approachable while also providing that research
Yeah, well,
that's
I can
there.
tell you that's how I prefer, the books I go through because it's so hard out there. And if you're going to spend the time investing your time to get better as a teacher, you don't want to feel like you're being lectured the whole time, right?
Right.
And by someone who has all the answers and is not a human. And I think it would be, you know, misaligned for you to be talking about connection and then have it be this, super high
Robotic
level.
or
Yeah.
yeah, yes.
So
No, so
I love it.
I wanted it to feel like, I was sitting there with you just having a conversation and
Yeah,
sharing some.
and it's just like this. I want people to know that we talked at IdeaCon in Chicago several months ago, where I was presenting and we met, and you are just a very approachable person who just happens to have all of this experience with multiple kinds of students, which leads me to my next question. Could you explain how the strategies in your book can help teachers create deeper connections with their students, especially in diverse and multilingual classrooms?
Right, absolutely. So, chapter 6 is all about how to connect with a wide range of students, just to make sure that all of the strategies that are in the book are accessible and can involve all students, because that's at the heart of who I am. We need every student to be engaged. As I shared with you, Alfredo, we were talking about that school day embedded service learning club when I was a middle school teacher. And for my doctoral research, I went back 12 years later and I had the privilege of interviewing 8 of those former students.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, it was just incredible. I did a series of 2 interviews with each of them to hear in their own words, how did that service learning, how did some of those connected strategies that were used in our classroom, how did that compare to some of those classrooms that were more traditional? And now that they are young people in their 20s, they've had more real world experience and can look back. They really had a lot to say. And truly, strategies like this were so impactful. They shared those opportunities when they were working together, let's say on those service projects. That's when they really got to know each other. They shared when they would go home, they were speaking their heritage languages. And really, the most time that they had to work on developing English was at school. And in many classrooms, it was a turn and talk or
Yeah.
something that was very short. At lunch, they weren't necessarily engaging in conversations in English. But to accomplish these projects, that's when they used the most English. They also shared they felt more relaxed and at ease. They were so stressed, wanting to do their best in these classes. All of these newcomers talked to me about knowing why their families had sacrificed so much to come to the United States for a better education. And then here they are in school, and they feel this immense you know obligation. They want to take advantage of this opportunity their parents were providing. So they carried that stress of not only trying to learn, but trying to acclimate to the new language, new ways of doing school. So they spoke about they were so motivated for these projects. Even though it wasn't for a grade, they gave their best. And it was the time where they felt their English and their confidence and their sense of community really grew. And so many of them are still in touch to this day.
Okay, so just to be clear for teachers and administrators listening, are you saying that students were actively engaged and learning on projects that did not have a grade attached to it?
I am saying that, and I stand by that, Alfredo.
Okay, I just want people to be clear that grades aren't everybody's uh main motivation, meaningful work. I think we need to maybe talk about meaningful work, even if it's homework, meaningful homework, asking meaningful questions, assigning meaningful tasks might change your students' approach to their effort level, their interest, their engagement, their authenticity, right? People are so stressed about AI and cheating. Okay,
Yeah.
well, what are you assigning? Why does a student feel like it's the trade-off of doing it with AI inauthentically is a fair trade for them? Would you say if AI were around at that time that the kids could have used AI to do those service projects?
They could have used it as a thought partner, 100%, just
Right.
to get some ideas on what they could do, but it would be them ultimately doing that work and still having those
Right.
conversations to
Right.
collaboratively complete it. And then, Alfredo, the other part is, I wouldn't say they necessarily have to be separate. So an example that comes to mind, the same group of amazing students that I was able to teach, there was one time, and I'm sure as a teacher you could relate, maybe you have a lesson that you think will take the whole time. Maybe it ends 10 minutes earlier than planned.
Right.
I had one of those days. I looked around my classroom and I saw a poster that I had up about Judy Baca, just an incredible, very talented artist out of UCLA. And it was sharing about a little bit about her background and her murals. And so we looked at that. We pulled up Judy Baca on the computer. And then the kids wanted to know and learn more about murals. And so we checked out every book from our school library. I went to my local library. So you had kids asking to read because it was something they were interested in. Then they asked, well, hey, teacher, can we make our own murals? I was so lucky. Our art teacher had planning time during our ESL, ELA time. So I said, why not? We did ELA up in the art room. The kids made their own murals together. But when you think about it, during that time, all the listening, speaking standards are there. They're having to navigate decisions together, collaborate. When the murals were done, I asked them to reflect about what it meant to be a good group member. What did they learn about collaboration? And so then they wrote, they shared what their reflections, what they would do differently when they're a part of a group next time. They each wrote a letter to Judy Baca and
Wow.
asked questions. Well, then it gets better. Once the murals had been displayed at the school, which the kids took great pride in, we rolled those up. We sent them off to UCLA with our letters to her. And I had almost forgotten about it. But about 2 months later, each student received an individual from Dr. Baca answering their questions. And then she had displayed their murals at UCLA and took
Goodness.
her picture in front of their murals. So this woman that was just on the poster in the classroom, inspired all of this. And truly the amount of language, the ELA we were able to accomplish through that project was far more than any workbook page.
I love it. And by the way, visually, I probably understand some of what this may have looked like because I went to UCLA and I worked on a project that got displayed at one of the coffee halls in there. And anyway, so I absolutely love that story for multiple reasons. Not one of the biggest reasons is I think people underestimate how impactful it is to teach middle school students.
Mm-hmm.
They have an energy. They will work for you if they feel seen. They will work for you if they feel like they are understood. And if they don't feel those things, it's a rough job.
Right. To be seen, heard, and valued, which is what every student, every child deserves at every grade level, for sure.
Yeah. and you can't. It's so I've taught 6th through 12th, and it's very difficult to leave the school year teaching middle school and not feel changed, not feel better, not feel like you really, really made a difference. Whereas I've had a couple of class periods in high schools where I don't even know if I made a difference to that group. But I've never felt that way about teaching middle school. So anyone listening who has this perception of middle school, but you're not really feeling rewarded at that high school level, consider it, please, because especially if you're listening to this episode because you value connection, connecting with middle schoolers is unlike any teaching experience I've ever had. I think, and you understand what that means because I think it changed you. It just sounds like it changed you.
It really did. In this experience with these students, I was able to use that to redesign the Innovative Methods course for National Louis University. And this is truly what's coming out in this book now. And to your point, that you brought up before, Alfredo, with people wanting to be able to, of course, we all want our kids to grow academically too. That's so important. We just can't overlook these other skills. But when I was a principal and multilingual director at the same time, out of 6 elementary buildings, as measured by MAP test, ours was behind. And it was kind of excused like, oh, well, the bilingual kids are there, so that's okay. Like,
Oh man.
oh my gosh. And we're like, no, that doesn't work for us. Had an amazing group of teachers. We rolled our sleeves up together. And that's when I first learned about Jeff Swears, my collaborator on the book. We used academic conversations. We focused on one academic conversation skill a year just to have kids talking more about their learning. And within 3 years, we went from that measure, that lowest performing, to the top in both ELA and math.
Again, I'm going to stop you there for people listening. Are you suggesting that getting students to talk in class regularly, where that's just an expectation, and there are ways to do it so they don't feel intimidated, right? Increases their engagement and ultimately these test scores that people place such a high value on?
100%. And kids take more ownership of their learning and they learn it deeply. I'm a huge fan of Vygotsky, the socio-cultural constructivist theory of learning. I want a Got Lev t-shirt.
Oh gosh.
Truly, kids sharing their ideas with others, hearing it from someone else, they're trying to explain it, which that's thinking. It helps them clarify their own thinking, understanding, gives the teacher as the facilitator insights into where they still have to maybe, provide more information, help kids further their own understanding, and truly helping kids be agents of their own learning, which is what a lot of these strategies are about, really helping kids find their strengths, helping every student see themselves as being capable. Their learning journey might look different than someone else's, but, again, every child deserves to have a teacher that believes in them and believes that they can learn. And these are strategies that we can layer on top of traditional instruction that will really help resonate with your wide range of students.
Well, that brings me to my next question, and you answered part of it. But as schools face more complex challenges, right, in fostering both academic achievement and socio-emotional well-being, what role does connection play in addressing both of these issues at the same time? And I know we addressed most of it, but what have we missed in terms of the role connection plays in having both the achievement and kids who feel good about being there?
Right. Well, I would say, Alfredo, a couple of things that stand out to me right now that I think is a common theme in education today. The rise of chronic absenteeism that we're seeing all over.
Mm-hmm.
And then, this could be just in Illinois, but I'm guessing it's all over. There's been a spike, I think, in student behaviors too within the classroom, and teachers that work so hard, to prepare lessons, to differentiate, to meet the needs of different kids, can just feel exhausted by students' off track behavior, students struggling to be successful in their classrooms behaviorally. It really can challenge and can really add so much stress for teachers, for administrators. And I would assert that's because, again, the shift over to the imbalanced use of technology, which again has advantages, but where we're missing those deep connections, where we're missing that fun, that group opportunities, times for kids to work together, to get to know the teacher as an individual, to get to know each other, not just, maybe an SEL class where they're hearing about, how the power of their words, or how to navigate a conflict. But when they're really having those times in a classroom, you put a group together and you're giving them a task, maybe adding friendly competition, which I always enjoy doing. Um, then they're actually trying it. They're navigating those skills. They're navigating those conversations. And that's the only way to learn, internalize, make mistakes, and grow through them.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
provide.
Fail. Like, yeah, fail. But get okay at failing. It's
Right.
okay.
And again, research shows when kids feel connected, when they feel that sense of belonging, they want to be in school. They don't want to miss. They're there more often. And again, if kids don't have as many social opportunities, that's when we see those behaviors happening in class. Maybe they misinterpret what someone said, or they have heightened reactions to things because they aren't thinking through identifying their emotions. How can I react to this? Or how can I put myself in my classmates' shoes? What did they really mean by that? And,
Well,
again,
I'll tell you too, on the absenteeism thing, I think there's certain
yeah.
teachers that need a little bit of redirection in terms of how they address a student's absences, right?
Mhm.
And so
Right.
that small reset for some teachers on, all right, so you have a kid who's been chronically absent. What are those conversations sounding like? What is your
Mhm.
late work policy? What is your retake policy? Is it compassionate? Is it rooted in, you know, uh, uh, developing the person, or is it rooted in punishment or your own comfort level? And one thing I heard you say earlier was about teachers trying to meet student needs, and I think uh, with some teachers, where some teachers are getting maybe the behavior issues are, they're using methods of meeting student needs that were maybe pre-COVID methods, right?
Mhm.
As our students change, whether it's the demographics in your town change, or whether something like COVID and technology changed those students, then our response needs to change. Or we at least have to be alerted, like, okay, what I'm doing is not working.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, and I think that's so true. When we look at the absenteeism numbers staying there or reducing not by that much, it should create that reflective pause where let's step back and look at what we're doing and what can we do differently, and placing ourselves in the student's shoes. Some kids struggle to make friends, or
Yeah.
if you've never read, oh, I have a book recommendation.
Okay.
It's so powerful, by Dr. Vivek Murthy, the
Uh-huh.
former US Surgeon General. Together, the Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. It's a long title, but such a great book.
Love it.
Um, and he points out, like, there is a loneliness epidemic in this
Yeah.
country, and it truly impacts kids' physical and mental well-being as well as adults. But you have kids that might feel like they have friends because they're DMing while they're playing games or they're texting, but that's a different level of friendship and connection than truly having those deeper friendships and people that will check in on you, people you can turn to. So we sometimes have kids that feel like they have friends, but and yet at the same time they end up feeling lonely, this loneliness.
Yeah.
And again, as schools, we could help to address that by providing these opportunities where kids can truly connect with each other, learn how to navigate, you know, different conflicts that come up, and develop friendships, and maybe with people they never would have expected through these strategies.
Right. How often do we group kids with the same kid? We don't change seating arrangements. They end up collaborating with the same 2 or 3 kids all year long. And somebody who could be an amazing friend for them is 2 rows over, but because you didn't mix it up, they never had that opportunity. And as someone who met some great people when I was in middle school and high school in groups like that, I will never forget that. And what I want to respond to, you brought up loneliness, right? The research is showing that loneliness is really hitting our kids, but at the same time, I'm hearing and seeing numbers that say that isolation is a often cited reason for teacher burnout. And if you take isolation and loneliness, I feel like connection is at least part of the solution to both of those things.
100%, Alfredo. And I think, I have so much respect for teachers, and I know that the day-to-day pressure that they're under. But again, go back to the why and why you chose to go into teaching in the first place. And I would put this challenge out. When you try some of these strategies in your classroom, yes, I'll admit it takes some additional planning, but hopefully the way the book is structured, it makes it very easy for you to try and layer some of these in. Not only will your kids respond in a positive way, but for teachers too, to see students responding that way, to see the engagement increase, to see that maybe even laughter and fun with learning, which I think we need.
Well, you've said fun twice already, and you're speaking my language right there. We got to make this fun again.
I'm going to level that up. Let's go joy of learning.
Right. Well, and that's the miss on social-emotional learning. Sometimes we present it as how to avoid stress, how to avoid conflict, how to manage all of these negative emotions. And yes, they have to manage their negative emotions, but some kids don't know how to manage positive emotions, or like have little tools to try to create these positive emotions. And we need to be offering that, but hey, both to the students and the teachers as well.
Right. But I do think these strategies, Alfredo, not only do kids respond to them, I think it really can be reinvigorating for teachers as well.
100%. Towards the end of the book, you discuss practical steps for educators to implement these strategies. So what advice would you give teachers who are just starting to incorporate social connection skills?
Sure. I would say, start small, give yourself grace. It may not go as you planned, and that's okay. Just try something else, but don't feel like it has to be in every lesson all the time. Just really, look ahead, look for something that's up and coming, and find a strategy that will work with it. Give it a try, start small. And I think it's, once you see that and have some success, you'll want to try more. And the other thing I would recommend is, to your point, with isolation, find your people.
Yeah.
Find other like-minded teachers, hopefully in your school, if not connected through powerful ways such as your podcast. But find your people. Brainstorm together, share what you tried, how it went. And I think once you see the difference, that will just become a part of how you teach.
And I can speak to you all day about this, right? But people have a limited capacity for interviews like this and all that. And your book provides a wealth of practical strategies for teachers. How can educators connect with you for further support, either through speaking engagements or consulting services to help implement the strategies that you're writing about?
Sure. So, I love, as you can tell, I'm passionate about this,
I
and
can tell.
love having the opportunity to work with districts or schools, or even, just answer questions for teachers. So you can go to my website, paonessa.com. I'm out there on social media, would love to connect, would love to answer questions however I can, work with people virtually or in person.
All right. We're at the end of a great interview, at which I have appreciated. And here at the Teach for Justice podcast, here in season 3, we always end with the same question, my favorite question to ask. Ann Paonessa, author of Essential Connection Skills, Integrating Social Connections into Core Content. What does it mean to you to teach for justice?
To me, teaching for justice really means creating classrooms where every single student feels seen, valued, and appreciated for who they are, where strengths are recognized, and Alfredo, where barriers are eliminated. I mean, we still have some constructs in our schools from back in the day, where industrial revolution and kids were sorted based on their family's background or social class to either be managers or repetition for workers. Some of those things still impact and have echoes of barriers within our current systems. So I think it's so important to look for those barriers, making sure every child has every opportunity that they can see themselves having any future that they want, that they're inspired to connect with others, to go out and make a difference in the world, to advocate for themselves and for others.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. I want to thank you for taking some time to join me here. I really especially want to thank you for highlighting this concept that doesn't seem to be first and foremost on some teachers' minds. And if it is, they may not have the strategies, and potentially their colleagues and administrators might not have readily available strategies to say, hey, here's how you connect with kids. And to be out there promoting this idea is, I think, one of the great services we can do. And to do it with the authority and credibility that you have, and your platform is, I just want to thank you as somebody who's advocating for justice in the classrooms, because I think you and I are on the same page on a lot of things, and I'm just very grateful for you. So everybody check the book out if you can, or check out her website, and ask yourselves, can I do something small to connect or increase my connection with the humans, the little humans in front of me who are showing up looking for this? The research shows that they feel lonely, right? Can I do something small to not just connect with them, but have them connect with each other? I think if we can leave today with that sort of call to action, I would feel like this was very, very productive. So, and we're going to say goodbye for now, but I look forward to speaking with you quite a bit going forward. And just again, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for this opportunity, Alfredo. I so appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.